Lesson 12-1, three-dimensional figures. So in this lesson, we're just going to be identifying and labeling and describing some three-dimensional figures. So the first thing we got to do is learn about some terminology. A plane is a two-dimensional flat surface that extends in all directions. So a piece of paper, the wall, the ceiling, anything like that is considered a plane. It is something that extends on and on and on, and it is considered a flat surface. A three-dimensional figure that has three dimensions, so length, width, and depth, sometimes height. So a figure that has three dimensions is called three-dimensional. If it only has two dimensions, so for example, length and width, then it's a two-dimensional object. Three dimensions gives it that 3D kind of standout look. Intersecting planes form three-dimensional figures. So when you have a plane, which is a flat surface that extends in all directions, when you have planes that connect together, that's what makes a three-dimensional figure. A polyhedron is a solid with a flat surface that are polygons. And we're going to talk about some examples of polyhedrons in just a moment. A prism is an example of a polyhedron with two parallel congruent bases. Remember, when we hear congruent, we think of equal. So if you look at this example, the picture on the left is an example of a prism because the bases, which are the two shapes on the ends, as we usually describe it, are congruent and they're also parallel, which means they go on and on forever and will never touch. A pyramid is a polyhedron with one base that is any polygon. So hexagon, heptagon, pentagon, octagon, square, triangle, any polygon, where its other faces are triangles. So the faces or the sides of a pyramid must always be triangles. So when we are naming a polyhedron, we use the base of the object to name what it is. So in the example here on the left, this one would be a pentagonal prism because it's a pentagon and it's a prism. And then the pyramid, we would call this a hexagonal pyramid because the base is a hexagon and it's a pyramid by definition because the sides of it are triangle and it is meeting at one vertices opposite of the base. So here's just a review. It shows an example of a triangular prism. Triangular prism has two bases. The shape of the base is a triangle, and then it gives you an example of what that would look like. The next one is a rectangular prism. Rectangular prism has two bases, and the shape of the base is a rectangle. We have a triangular pyramid. The shape of the base is a triangle, and it has one of them. And then we have a rectangular pyramid. The shape of the base is a rectangle, and there's only one. So some other three-dimensional shapes that we have include circles. A cylinder is a three-dimensional figure with congruent parallel bases that are circles. So we see cylinders when we see like garbage cans or cups. The ends are circles, and the thing that goes around the side is a curved side. We also see a cone. A cone has the base of a circle, but then it has one vertex that is perpendicular to the base. So when we are identifying a shape, we look for three different things. An edge is where two planes intersect in a line. So this right here would be an edge because you would have the top plane and the side plane that would intersect on that edge. We also have a face, and a face is the flat surface. So the face here would be like this side of the shape. That would be your face. Or you have a vertex, and a vertex is where 3 points intersect. So it would be this one because you have this plane You have this plane and you have this bottom plane that intersect at that vertex. So if we were looking at this shape and we wanted to identify this shape, you would want to list all the faces for the shape. So if we were listing just the faces, we would list A, B, C. We would list A, C, D, and A, B, D. The base in this example would be B, C, D. Your edges would be A, B, A, C, A, D, B, C, C, D, and B, D. And then your vertices would just be A, B, C, and D. So when you're identifying three-dimensional figures, you want to make sure that you identify the faces, the base, the edges, and the vertices. When we are talking about three-dimensional figures, we also have what we call as a cross-section. And the cross-section of a figure can be a little bit hard to describe. When you think of a cross-section, you want to think of cutting the figure in half with scissors along the area that they identify. And when you have the two pieces in front of you, what would the figure look like? What would the shape on the figure look like? I do have an activity using Play-Doh with this, so if you are struggling with cross-section, please ask me and I can show you an activity that will really help identify the cross-section of figures using Play-Doh and dental floss. So if you're looking at this image here and we have a cross-section of a cylinder, depending on which way you cross the figure, you can get different images. So if our cross-section was right here through the middle, then the image that would be represented by the halves would be a circle. If you crossed this image and you crossed it vertically, the image that you would see would be a rectangle because the two sides on the inside would be a rectangle. So you can see that depending on how you want the shape to be cut will determine the shape that is left behind in the cross-section image.